Beacon, you want to get us started?
Oops, you're on. You're on mute. Beacon,
Can you hear it? No.
did you
No?
share screen? It's not showing up.
Go in. Oh, okay.
No, nothing's coming through.
Can you hear? No?
No,
No.
and it's not showing that you're doing a sound share either.
Did you give her permission, Casey?
Mhm.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go.
Relax your spine. Simply become aware. Close your eyes. And simply become aware of your breathing. We're going to use the breath to bring you into the present moment. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. As you inhale, feel cool air coming into the body and nurturing. As you exhale, feel warm air leaving the nostrils, releasing any tension and negative emotion. Feel your feet connecting you to the earth. Feel your shoulders sinking down. And feel your neck elongating. Relax your forehead, your eyes, your jaw, your ears, and relax all the muscles of the neck. Come back to the breath. The coolness on the inhalation, bringing you into the present moment. The exhalation, the warm air leaving, knowing you are safe, relaxed. Quieten your mind. Let thoughts go by like white, fluffy clouds in a blue sky. Pay your attention back to your breath. Releasing yourself from the past and from the future. Fully enjoying this present moment. Feeling yourself cultivating an inner peace. A safe place for you to come. And breathe. And slowly open your eyes and come back to the room.
All right, thank you, Beacon. Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order at 10 p.m. Let's start with roll call. Frank?
Present.
Pete is absent today. Danielle?
Here.
Deacon?
Here.
All right, we have quorum. Let us begin. At this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda. However, there is one small, I'm sorry, I'm off. Meeting called to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I can't believe I missed all of this. Okay. Please stand, right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Casey, would you like to lead us through the Goethe Pledge?
Sure. As a citizen of the world, I will follow the Goethe circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind. Ideas lead to knowledge. Responsible choices show respect. Cooperation strengthens others. Learners are courageous. Empathy creates community. Vicky, will you help me with the German?
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Thank you, Biggie. Okay, now I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda. There is a change. We will not be able to review the follow-up to the student achievement goals for the Galileo testing. And if that's all right with everyone, we will proceed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Deacon?
Yes.
All right. And with that, let us move to public comments. Do we have any public comments today, Casey? That is a new, I would take, right? All right. Casey there? Sorry, you're going in.
Sorry, Chris shared my screen and it did something it's never done before, and my entire Zoom thing, I can't find participants. Hold on one moment.
Sorry about that. Do you want me
That's
to
it.
unshare?
No, it's fine. I got it. It just was
Casey,
being,
there's no hand up.
thank you. Okay. Just a reminder though, if anybody did want to do public comment in participants, and then click on raise hand. But there is no public comment. Sorry for that delay.
No, that's all right. Thank you. All right. So let us continue. I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes from the 8th. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Deacon?
Yes.
All right. Moving on to the ED report. Chris, floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. For the ED report today, I'll be looking at the year in review. And to know about the year, we kind of need to look back to where we started. And so there were, at the beginning of this year, a year ago at this time, we really had a confidence crisis with the school, in which we had multiple families that were on the verge of leaving the school, and we're saying, and several did, but thankfully many did not. And that was one of the key things we were dealing with. Was kind of uncertainty. There was uncertainty about the ED position itself. of how that was going to play out, of how it did play out in the previous year, and you had a brand new ED. You didn't know about him, so that was a big question. There was concern about board interaction and transparency in general, and we had a budget that was negative 401. So we had some things that were a tough way to start, but we focused on a couple of things. At the very beginning, I said many times, this is going to be the year of limited drama, and I think for the most part we met that. We had our moments, but we really did try to focus on what's important, and that's students. And the more we did that, the better off we were. We made a very strong initial focus on fundraising and expanding communication and openness, building that transparency into everything we do. And the thing about building trust is it takes time. It can be wiped away in one fell swoop. But it takes years to build trust. And so that was really the goal, was to start that trust building process. We were constantly looking at expenditures from the very beginning of the year. One of the first things we did, if you recall, was we went from 2 MYP teachers to 1 when we knew enrollment wouldn't cover that. And although it was a goal to open up with 2 teachers at that time, we switched it to 1, and I think it was just a matter of funding. In the same way, legal is an example of something that we had spent $110,000 the previous year on legal fees. We reduced that significantly this year, and we'll see when the final tally is there. But that was something all year long we kept thinking about. Is this something we need to check with legal on, or can we make a good decision? Or when we talk to legal, we'll keep it short. We also shifted to YMC, which really was beneficial in terms of how they were billing us. And so we really did bring down that cost, even in the face of some difficulties, which we'll get to in a second with regard to legal issues. So ongoing reduction of expenditures and the continuous development of the MYP. All of this to restore confidence across the entire organization. We faced our challenges that I think a lot of the issues we were dealing with from the previous year were kind of brought on ourselves. And that's what we really worked on, is not self-inflicted issues. And I think we did a good job with that. Unfortunately, there were some issues that came to us from other places. And the political climate in general in California and in the nation, and in particularly in Los Angeles Unified, was a difficult political climate, much more difficult than in previous years. And although there's always been some issues, this was a politically difficult time. We of course had the issues with the Prop 39 over-allocation penalties that were assessed to us, that we are still continuing to fight in court. Or not in court yet, but that we're through in the mediation process. We, of course, dealt with the COVID-19 and campus closure. Was something that no one saw coming. We've been dealing with under-enrollment throughout the year, and that's something it was stemmed. We didn't continue to lose throughout the year, but we started the year under-enrolled, and we remained right there. Our subgroup academic performance, that's something that has been a challenge that we've needed to look at in this year. And then, of course, what we've been dealing with in the past month is the budget reductions for 2021. So it has not been all simple and easygoing. There have been challenges, but there have been huge successes this year. I really believe we've had a restoration of confidence from families. And I don't just say that because I want it to be so. I say it because we've heard it from families. We've seen it in emails to us. We have seen it in different surveys that we have given, where we've gotten repeatedly comments about thankful to the overall organization and how that there's just that building up of the feeling of trust. We have had a successful fundraising year, which we always want more, but we've had a successful fundraising year, and back in August and September, it was tough when we were first just launching the annual giving campaign, and some of the initial results weren't quite where we wanted them to be. But over time, we added and built to that. Can we do better? Sure. But we really did. We had a very successful fundraising year. We've improved communications and transparencies. We added communication pieces such as the Tuesday briefing, so that we weren't having a once a week newsletter, which was growing and growing and growing. We split that up into 2 parts. And so we had our Thursday newsletter and we had our Tuesday briefing. We also provided a lot of information through GICS communication all the way along. We tried not to be overwhelming, and we tried to have these be much more consistent in the times that they were given and consistent in the manner in which it was presented, and that the information was brought in a clear and concise way, well thought out. Again, we received a lot of feedback that people were extremely happy with how communication was going throughout the year. We expanded our outreach, both in traditional. We added things like LA Parent magazine we got involved with, the Argonaut, which we've been involved with for a long time, Westchester Living, which we'd never been involved with before. We also included some things that we haven't done before, which were just getting launched, like bus ads. So that's going to be something that's coming up. But also social media. And while we haven't seen the fruits of this yet, we're just getting started. And so I think this is going to be a really important piece moving forward, is that we continue to build our social media footprint. We had an absolutely improved oversight review in which, in an area where we had received a 1 previously, we jumped up to a 4, the highest level. All 3s and 4s, all passing levels, and this is hugely important for when we are going to be reviewed, renewed on our charter. And so a really important piece that we had to get right. The amount of work that went into it is pretty unbelievable. It didn't just happen, but the fact that it was successful is really a positive. We had a successful launch of the MYP, and even though it was a small group, it was a mighty group, and they really did an amazing job. The students, the teacher, Mr. Michelson, all worked together to make this a successful start, and we're going to build on that. We did an extremely swift pivot to distance learning, and again, the feedback on that was extremely positive. No one saw it coming. It's not something we planned for, but we jumped into it with both feet and really worked hard. And then finally, that we approved a balanced budget for 2021 under difficult and painful circumstances of really having to make some significant reductions and cost savings. But that it puts us in a place to be able to move forward. So our final slide is looking forward. What are things that I want to do as executive director, and things that I see are particularly important? We would have been launching into this spring, getting it initiated, but the renewal of the strategic plan, that's a really important piece, and looking 4 or 5 years out from where we are now. That we need to develop a material revision for our language program. We've made a significant change already in how we're structuring it at grades 3, 4, and 5, and we want to really double down on that and make it work great from kindergarten through 5th grade for our language acquisition program. We have the thing that we need to work on when it comes to academic performance is improvement across the board, but specifically with our subgroups, that we are making sure that we are focusing on all of our students by looking at our subgroups and making sure that all different groups, whether it's English learners, whatever socioeconomically disadvantaged, all our different ethnicities, we want to be sure that our students are succeeding. We are going to continue the build out of MYP. We are going to continue to defend our against the Prop 39 penalties that were levied. We intend to maintain a balanced budget and increase enrollment to make that budget work through outreach. And finally, to continue to build confidence in the organization. That building of trust needs to continue on. So those are the areas that I'm looking at, and I know there's going to be some discussion for the board later about looking ahead to next year, but I wanted to give you my first thoughts at it, and I will end there. And if there are any questions or comments related to the year in review. Yes, here.
Sorry, Chris. Thank you, Chris. I have some questions, but I will defer to the other board members to get the conversation started, Frank.
Did you assign the speaking right to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no questions and no comments at this stage.
All right, Danielle.
Same for me. I don't have questions or comments.
Beacon.
Yeah, I just want to express my appreciation for Dr. Jones and for the whole admin team, especially in regards to transparency and building that confidence in the organization. I think it was a lofty goal, and in really, really uncertain times with many external challenges, as you said, I think you guys did a brilliant job of continuing that and having no drama from within, and then really taking drama from without and working together to do a great job. Teamwork makes the dream work. You guys exemplified that beyond. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Beacon. So Chris, I will just say that Chris and I, we met for the Executive Council a couple of hours ago, and I had not seen this document, and I shared with him my suggested goals for the board for next year. So I'll just hold off on that for my presentation, but I will say that I feel like we are in alignment as far as next year. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. Okay. There's nothing further. Let us move on to the approval of extension of powers for the executive director. Just so I'm clear, it is until August 18, 2020. Is that right, Chris? And when is the first day of school?
August 18th, 2020.
Perfect. All right. I would like to make a motion to approve the extension of powers. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right. All in favor? Frank,
Aye.
Danielle,
Aye.
Deacon,
Yes.
and ayes for me as well. Motion is ratified. Okay, moving on to the review of the board goals, assignments, and priorities. So if you'll, Casey, if you wouldn't mind sharing or allowing me the ability to share.
You should have that already.
Oh, I need to unshare. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's you. Okay, sorry. All right, so I would like to start off by where we are today. Just give me a moment. Okay, so this is, if anything, is close to our task list objectives. This has been it. Many of you have seen iterations of this. Our meetings have been driven by it, the content of the meetings. And I'm actually very, very pleased to say that we've accomplished close to over 85% of what we had set up to accomplish for this year. So a lot of things have gone green. However, I would like to highlight some of the things that have not yet. We were not able to come to a resolution of the Prop 39 penalties. We were not able to explore further for the school expansion. We did not get the board development committee in a good place, which would have resulted in a more conclusive composition and recruitment strategy. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategic plan that was on our calendar to discuss as well, but with COVID, it became very difficult to schedule that. I mentioned the board development committee. Even though the charter was appointed, we actually never proceeded on appointing membership. The parent staff survey recommendations, we did not visit, but Chris, did we have a parent survey sent out this year?
Yes, survey just it was out. It was as part of actually the COVID-19 survey that is reported on today.
Got
Not
it.
details of the survey, but the general part of it is reported.
The board member appointment policy, not the parent one because that was ratified, but the non-parent board member appointment policy. We just want to clean up that procedure. We did not need the winter consolidated application, and since so far this year there was only one standing board committee, the finance committee, we did not get a chance to evaluate it. Chris has already presented his 2020-2021 goals, and I will also present in a few minutes this document for the new year. Any questions about this so far? From anyone? Frank?
No questions, thank you.
Danielle?
No questions.
Deacon?
Can you scroll down the parent survey?
Yeah.
So the survey that we were sent is supposed to,
I believe that is the survey. Is that right, Chris? You want to elaborate on it a little bit?
Yeah, we normally do an end of the year survey. That's a typical piece that we do sometime in May. This year, it specifically revolved around COVID-19 because of the requirements that we had to present actually on today's agenda, which is a report to the community about COVID-19 response. So that survey melded into the COVID-19 one specifically.
So is this a survey that's going to change every year?
It is a the first time we did it was last year, which prior to that we used different ones, but the one that we used ties to the LCAP. And so LCAP, they give you a couple of different choices of surveys that you can use. And so we had chosen the one from last year because LCAP is on hold at the moment because of the COVID-19 stuff. That's where the survey that we just sent out to community, and we were kind of if you saw, we were pushing to make sure we got as much feedback as possible. That was the one that went out in May, June.
Got it. And you see, when this was put on, was it put on to be for LCAP, or was there another reasoning? Because I see performance evaluation.
So the original purpose, so I think, yeah, so I'm just going to go back. So if you've heard this before, I apologize. So Meakin, the purpose of this document was to be completely transparent as to what each board member's expectation was as far as our work for the year. So everyone had input, and we wanted to, if there were things missing from it, we would add it. Like, when the Prop 39 came on, it got added to it. So part of this document is about, like, let me see, like this one, the item 14, right? Evaluate and adopt CFD oversight visit recommendations. So a lot of these things are just things that happen regularly through the course of the year, every year, and some are, brand new things that we put on, like the exploration of the funding for our school. The parent survey was something that was on the board agenda last year, and it carried it forward because it was believed that is something that we do ongoing. And what I'm hearing from Chris is that has sort of morphed into a more COVID-centric one this year. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, as a result, because it's tied to LCAP, and LCAP
right.
shifted the rules basically by pushing.
And
Yes,
yeah, and the other thing with go ahead, sorry.
I think we could still do another survey, because this was the LCAP, the COVID-19 specific survey that we needed for this COVID report. So that's additional because of the special circumstances. However, we still have to do the LCAP, which we will be doing in the upcoming month. And I'm not quite sure yet, because the template doesn't exist yet from the CDE. It might also include the survey as it did last year. So we might have to do another survey that is more general in the questions, not so much specific to COVID-19. So I don't think it's wrong that it's on your list, and it should be a recurring thing, because you want to have the data over the years so that you can compare them. But as of right now, Chris is right, we didn't need to do it because LCAP is not yet being done. And of course, we didn't want to have parents or families fill out 2 surveys at the same time. So that would have been overwhelming. But we as admin, once that CDE template for the LCAP is out, we'll have to see if we do another survey or if it's needed.
Thank you, Biggie. As far as and Beacon, just a little background on the parent survey that I had seen from a presentation standpoint last year, and I've shared this with Chris, and I'll share it with the board. My reaction to it was I had a very strong reaction, because the survey, I think, had like 100 questions, and it was discussed. Every question was discussed in detail, but I couldn't glean any actionable items from it. And when I had spoken to Chris about it at the beginning of the year, in executive council, I had asked him that if we do conduct a survey, for it to be actually, give us some value where we can determine, changes in curriculum, changes in resources. So it's a little disappointing we didn't get to it this year, but something did go out, and from what I understand, it's more tied to LCAP. So does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you for clarifying. I do have a better sense of it now. And so let me just repeat and correct me if I'm wrong. So the board would like a typical survey that presents actionable items, and currently we're using the LCAP ones, and at some point that could shift and one could be created.
I mean, I would be definitely, I think a survey for the parent community, and it just doesn't have to be the parent community, it could be school-wide for all stakeholders. But I think the format that I saw last year, and I do apologize, I haven't seen the format this year, so I can't speak to it, but the format was incredibly granular, and the results were vague. So I do think it's of import to modify that.
Can I chime
go ahead.
in on that?
Yep.
Just so you know, what our plan was to take that what was an enormous survey and narrow it down to just the most important things, so that it's not this massive information that we can't get through. We were going to narrow it down. So anything that we do moving forward is going to be much narrower in scope, but much richer in what you are able to glean from it. So that was our intention.
Well, my final comment on the survey is, I always have concern what we measure and what the scale is, scale 1 to 5, scale 1 to 7. What do we measure? Are these leading questions and stuff like that? So I think we just need to spend really some time on doing the survey and really formulating what we try to look into, and how do we measure it and make it consistent. Because changing it year over year, don't get anything. And I think the survey wasn't done well so far. My personal opinion.
Frank, you don't mean the one that just went out? You mean like previous years?
No, the previous year, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Danielle, any other comments or questions?
No questions or comments.
All right. I will then move on to. So what I did, and the purpose of this document is for this upcoming year. And I will give this to Chris, and Chris will share it with all the board members, so you guys can add, things that you think are important to the organization that we might have missed. I'm going to talk a little bit about it more in a few minutes when we get into the board candidacy and appointment process, as far as for next year, at least for myself. But a few of the things that I've added already, just so everyone can see, is, for example, I imagine we will have to approve some type of school-wide education plan for 2020, 2021, whether that means, distance learning for, 90 days, or, something that Chris will bring forth, and in order for us to accommodate the current pandemic situation. And like other years, or like this year, we'll have, the board goals, which is actually this document, adopting our activity calendar, which is the remainder of these documents, that's the thing from a priority standpoint. Our code of conduct that we have to sign every year. I will talk about the board member performance evaluation in the board development section of our meeting today. And a few other things, just like we have had this year, such as Chris's focus and deliverables. One thing that's important, and again, I'll mention it in a few minutes, is establishing our own flavor of student achievement. So take a look at it right now. Again, this is just a draft. The goal will be to approve this in August at the beginning of the school year with everyone's feedback and comments. And once this document is approved, the items will be prioritized and it will go on our calendar so that we can proceed in deliberations. The items from the, sorry, let me go back. This is the 2019. The items that were in this document that we did not get to deliberate on. So for example, board composition and recruitment strategy, alignment with strategic plan, those items have been moved over into this document. Sorry, let me go back for the new year. Is that clear? Any questions or comments? Frank?
No comments.
Danielle?
I did want to comment that it's pretty fantastic to see how much was accomplished this year. When you look at what we haven't done, it was a very small amount. And the beginning of the school year was spent playing catch up on a lot of things. So I think it's pretty great.
Beacon?
Yeah, I'll agree.
And on that note, I would just like to profusely thank each of you. I think when we started this year, as Chris has said, trust was definitely something that was questioned and challenged in this board. But I still remember showing this document to Chris the first time. He threw up all over it and he said, "There's no way we're going to be able to do this." But I think we did set the bar pretty high, and the only reason we were able to meet it is because of our own relationships in that room and our dedication to the organization. I've always said that no matter who I talk to as a stakeholder in the organization, everyone wants what's best for this organization. It's just a matter of listening, prioritizing, organizing, and discussing. So I am also very, very impressed, but it could not have been done without, he's not here, but without the four of us, or the three of you, and of course, Chris and his team as well. So thank you, everyone. Okay, so if there's nothing further on this, we will send this out most likely tomorrow morning. And you guys can start reviewing it and modifying it as you see fit. The goal for this for next steps will be, it's my hope that we get this to a final point to vote on in our first meeting in August. So we'll have some time to review it. Instructions will be coming. So for example, right now for, right now, there's really no priority here as far as what's the most important, what's the least important. I think these two are probably the most important. We got to have our plan and our calendar before we kind of put things up. But feel free to move things around as you see fit, and we'll try to do it digitally before we meet. Okay. With that being said, if there are no more questions, I'm going to stop sharing and we will move on to the next item on the agenda. All right, so approval of the vendor contracts. I would like to make a motion to approve for the vendor contracts for the upcoming year. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, let me pull up. So we have several contracts that we do annually at this time. We there are specific services that are provided from back office to all different types that we have. And I want to go through them. And those have been in the, all the contracts have been in the Dropbox since Friday. So if there's any questions, we can pull them up. But this is an overall setup, which includes the vendor name, description of service, the annual contract from last year, from this year, and the grade A through F is simply a administrative judgment. So this is not a, there's no formal rubric on that, but I just want to be clear that this is, we're not bringing forward anything that we're uncertain about the quality, although there are some variances in perhaps level of quality. But these are all services that are required. So I'm going to go through each one, and then at the end I can answer questions. I'll start off with A+ Charter Consulting, which is, this is related to LCAP. And LCAP has become the kind of catch that is being used with charters with regard to renewal. The landscape changes constantly in terms of legal requirements, and this service provides us with the best defense we have against having some mistake that is going to be held against us in renewal. And so given the hostile political landscape and the constantly changing issues of LCAP, and we are, and are speaking for administrator, we're extremely happy with the service provided that allows us to get this accomplished. It is a continued cost. It's the same as last year at a $6,000 contract. The second is insurance, which is broken down into two different areas. We've used CharterSafe for many years. General insurance and workers' compensation, we use them for both. For workers' compensation, there is no change whatsoever. But under general insurance, there's a significant change. This is based on the general insurance climate. And we included a renewal letter in your Dropbox that had explanations. And literally, it was a 3 or 4 page letter that had all kinds of reasoning as to what was happening in the world of insurance, and specifically related to schools. So that increase that you see from $70,130 to $93,383, that is related to general insurance. We are essentially tied right now to CharterSafe. And the reason is we are exposed to a great risk in terms of defending ourselves against LA Unified with regard to Prop 39 over allocations. If you recall, we tendered to insurance and they accepted, and we've already paid now almost the complete $5,000 deductible for our for tendering to insurance, the protection, the defense against LA Unified. We would be tossing that away essentially if we were to go with another insurance carrier. So we're pretty well tied with this. This amount, by the way, all the amounts that are listed in for the new year were all budgeted, with the exception of the CharterSafe one was we did not have that amount in it, so that is something that's to the negative. But I'll talk about any other changes as we move forward. So that one is an unbudgeted amount, but it is one that I feel we absolutely have to continue forth to maintain defense in or the over allocation issue. On line 4 is Del Techies. This is our IT support. We've used them for many, many years. We are very happy with their service. We are, in the past, we had to put forth an amount, and we budgeted for an amount that did not include our E-rate reductions because we couldn't count on those. So we budgeted without the E-rate in there. And so that was that. We used last year's number at 34,176. We were able to talk to Del Techies, and they offered to assure that no matter what for this year, they will charge us no more than what would be the E-rate amount. So we're able to budget at 21,312, which puts us in a much better spot and it offsets some of the CharterSafe increase. So we're really thankful to Del Techies that in other words, that if E-rate for some reason did not come in, they're not going to charge us beyond 21,312. So we're able to put that as a budgeted amount. So that's good. Moving forward, on line 6, our service with XED for back office services. If you recall, we were late in getting this finalized last year, and we were only able to do a 1-year approval. The level of, I'm sorry, I jumped over on line 6, but I'm going to continue on. The level of approval on that is, we put it as an A. We've had a 10-year run with XED, and we're familiar with their processes, and they give us good service. They were able to, from what would have been a 1-year contract, would have been a larger increase, up over 100,000, and so we were able to, with the savings, or with doing a 2-year contract, save about 2,300 per year over what it would have been. In year 1, it'll show as 97,375, and in year 2, it's budgeted at 99,750. So we are recommending that. The final 3 areas, and all of these did receive a B instead of an A from us for various reasons. On line 5 is Direct Ed, which we've used for some years. It's now called Cross Country Education. The cost factor is one of the pieces. Comparable services can be extremely way more expensive. What we've had some issuing is with staff consistency and being sure that we're able to get coverage when there's staff consistency if someone shifts or moves. There's not been a lot of problems with that, but there have been a few, and so we thought we wanted to be sure that was mentioned. We are recommending continued. We do not feel we can provide the services to students without them. And on line 7, the language and literacy group is a group we've just started with this year. We got them initially for assessment, and it's a very reasonable assessment price, and that was a difficult thing to find. This is for dyslexia services, and so we want to continue with that. We also looked into, and it's part of the contract of intervention, structured literacy intervention. However, we felt that was a higher amount, so we are unlikely to use those parts of the contract, but we would likely use the assessment report should we need it. All of these services through special education are as needed based on IEPs, individual education plans. And the same way with our largest provider of services, which is Total Education Solutions on line 8. there are lots of different hourly rates. They were either no increase or a $5 per hour increase from last year to this year. Again, a lower cost than competitive service providers. There was an analysis of this done last year, and but again, we've had some issues with staff consistency and scheduling, but we feel we've worked through all those things. Mr. Michelson has done a good job of keeping out ahead of any issues and making sure we don't miss out on services. So those are the ones that were in there. I wanted to be sure that the scope of services were there, and if you can, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have no questions, Frank.
I have no questions either.
Danielle?
No questions.
Deacon?
None for me as well.
All right. Then we'll proceed to the vote. All in favor to approve the new vendor contract? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Deacon?
Yes.
All right, that's enough for me. Vendor contracts are approved. Moving on. Approval of the community report for COVID-19 response. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
That's a second from Danielle. All right, Chris, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up from here. All right, this is a written report that was a brand new requirement. However, it replaced the requirement that we have our LCAP in June. The reason for it is LCAPs were postponed because of COVID-19. So part of the requirement was that we report to the community of how things have gone with COVID-19. And so this is a 6-page report, the highlights of which talks about everything that we did from Friday, March 13th onward, and how we developed a distance learning plan, how we took care of technology needs, that we have, how we've dealt with specific needs for students with disabilities, for behavioral intervention, how we provided even through distance learning, making sure that we were providing for our students with IEPs. We looked at the impact of distance learning and where things were for our English learners, our low-income and foster youth. We had a chance to kind of share all the different things that we're doing in our online, from Zoom meetings we put first because that's really been a central hub. Seesaw and Google Classroom being learning management systems that really helped us. And then everything below that, from Envision Math all the way downward to Resources for Families, all the different online programs that we do, as well as the services we provided for families, including Chromebook distributions, including home delivery as needed, that we've been doing. So that's what each of the bullets are. We talked a little bit about everything from how we did set up grading with our hold harmless philosophy. We talked about our social emotional learning and the information that was provided to families on a repeated multi-times a week basis at times. That was extremely helpful. That we had our surveys that we sent out and some results that came out from those, and we can look in more detail at the ones that really kind of stand out here, but that that students were able to access frequently or almost all the time. They certainly agreed their teachers are helpful in supporting their learning. Probably the only one that was a little lower than we thought and wanted is that 61% reported they had an adult to assist them with schoolwork, some or almost always. So that's one that kind of stood out with students. And our staff reported that they were had some, almost all of them had some level of concern about their own social emotional well-being or some level of concern about their physical well-being. And we listed all the different areas in which it is, but the very, very few were reporting that, no problem. The community, we did want to find out if there was a reliance on food support, which did not appear to be the case for the most part, and that we were able to have reliable access to distance learning and a laptop or a Chromebook. So that was good to see. And so overall, the last two things were that we had how we dealt with food service, and then how we, which was the grab and go at our site, and then the final question was about childcare, which we were not able to provide childcare on the campus, both because we don't have enough people and we didn't have a place to do it. So that is the written report. It does require that we think of this in conjunction with the budget that we just approved last week. So when we do approve this, it is in conjunction with the budget that we did these things, and we're thinking about next year, and that we're confirming the budget that we did last week at the same time. So that's the written report. Are there any questions that we can answer for you?
Great. Do you have any questions?
I today do not have a lot of questions.
Danielle?
Maybe you covered this, but can you tell us what % of parents participated in the survey?
Yes, and I believe it's right there, but I didn't cover it. Where are we? So parent participation was 81%.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, we were
That's
thrilled with that response. So 260 out of, I think it's 325 families, something like that. Forget the exact math, but it was when we did it, it was 81%. And we had full response from our 4th through 6th graders, 99% and 100% on staff. So
That's
I
great.
think this was a good indication for sure.
Yeah, so that makes it pretty conclusive, which is really good when you're seeing these stats. For the data point, 61% reported that they had an adult assist them. I know you mentioned that one. Was there any indication on, like, was that higher in certain grades than others? Because I would imagine, with younger grades, you're getting, parents are helping their kids get on Zoom and all of those things. They need a little bit more time, assistance.
And I think we do have a way to analyze that with students. And so I don't know the answer off the top of my head unless anyone else in admin does, but we can see if there's anything reportable on that.
Yeah, I mean, that number doesn't feel concerning, but it was, you'd pointed it out, like, that it felt like it was a high percentage, but maybe it was for younger grades.
But yeah, that is a question. I mean, it would be interesting to know, is it older or younger or across the board?
Yeah, but I think the results are great. I mean, it really reports that people were very satisfied and happy with how, distance learning went. It's nothing anybody would have chosen as their first choice, but it seems like it worked really well. So congrats to you guys.
Chris, I don't think that we can find out who said what because it's an anonymous questionnaire. We know how many students per grade level participated, but we cannot know who said what. and it was only for 4th through 6th grade. So the really young students were not included
Oh,
survey anyway. So it's more the upper grades. So therefore, it might make more sense that they didn't need the assistance.
I'm sorry, and I didn't share that clearly, that it is 4th through 6th grade are the only grade levels that did take it.
oh, okay.
And sorry, just to interject, even though it's an anonymous survey, we can pull the responses so that you can see each submission, how everyone responded. So we could pull only the responses that were from each of the grades and look at the percentages that way.
Yeah, and when you say too, like some to almost always, that's a huge range, right? So some could mean twice they helped their child get onto a Zoom meeting when they were new to it, right? And then always means, yeah. So that's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah,
No other questions or comments from me.
thank you.
Beacon?
Nothing for me, thank you.
All right, then we will go to a vote. All in favor to approve the report? Frank?
Yes.
Danielle?
Bye.
Beacon?
Yes.
Yes for me. Moving on to the summer assignments and calendar.
Okay. Pull that one out. This is just a quick update on what our plans are. First of all, the main office is going to be closed from July 6th through July 17th. So there won't be anybody on campus for those 2 weeks. But we will be open up through July 3rd. I'm sorry, July 2nd. July 3rd is the pre-holiday of the July 4th is a Saturday. The other thing is that we have summer school, and summer school is, I'm actually going to let Casey, if you can talk about summer school and the curriculum writing, I'll let you do that for Scott too. He's laid up in bed.
For summer school, we are planning to hold 4 weeks of courses for students from June 22nd, so starting next week, through July 17th. So it's the kind of mid 4 weeks of the summer break. There are 5 current staff who are going to be leading the tutoring session, or not the tutoring sessions, the summer school sessions. And we have them covering English, language arts, math, and German. And then all grade levels have been able to participate. This is not going to be open to all students because of our limitations with the amount of staff that we have and their availability. And so students will be invited based on their academic needs. So teachers before the end of the school year sent me a list of students they would like to invite for English, language arts, math, or German, or any combination of those that are needed. And those invites will go out to families tomorrow. And then the focus during summer school will really be on foundational skills in each of those subject areas. So making sure that students are getting the consistent practice through the summer to help them prepare to start the next school year. We currently have, let me just pull up my numbers. Oops. About 30 students who will be invited to attend the classes, and the focus really is on keeping a smaller class size so students can get really specific support at their level. For the curriculum writing, this is the same process that we went through last summer in preparation for opening up 6th grade, where our teachers for the middle years program, so the core content teachers, but also our exploratory courses, they will be working from June 22nd to the 24th for curriculum development specifically for 7th grade. So we have the 6th grade content written, because that was done last year, and so this year will be the same group of staff working on the 7th grade curriculum. So they're building out units of inquiry and for each of those content areas.
Casey, I have a question. So is this the first year we're doing summer school?
It is.
Is this, and I guess this is for you and Chris as well. I understand from a resource standpoint and from a class size standpoint, but is this something that could be an addition to our program that we could possibly employ starting next year?
It is something that's possible. We set this up. This is a response to COVID-19 specifically, and that trying to make sure there is less summer loss for some students who are experiencing some struggles. We are doing this. It is online, so that's you know, a piece that's there, but online may be a way in which we can work around the fact that we haven't had summer campus available to us. So it is something that we can do, and we did budget this across both the June time is worked within the current budget, but we did budget the July amount within with what was in the approved budget.
So I have to ask, could you employ some kind of a survey for the participants, the students, and the parents involved or the families involved, which shows the efficacy of this program? I think it's great from a remediation standpoint with COVID, but I also think that this might be of some value, especially in the German language portion, for students, because I've heard concerns that especially students who don't speak German in the home, there's a problem, 3 months of not speaking German on a regular basis. So definitely something to think about. But if you could employ like a 10-question survey to the students and the parents, I wouldn't do it after the program. I would probably do it a few weeks, in August when school starts, to see how effective the program was, and then something to think about for next year as a potential addition to the program. Frank, any questions?
No, that was my concern. Only a comment that was my concern, that not everybody participates in online learning or had the ability to be supported by the parents, and may not get the full curriculum or the full exposure to the curriculum. And as such, it's a great thing to remediate this. And it answered my questions, which I asked a couple of board meetings before.
All right, Danielle?
No questions for me.
Beacon?
Nothing for me, thank you.
All right, then we will move on to the review of the strategic plan. Let's be in bed.
No. Hi,
Do you need to
Chloe.
share?
Someone else is sharing, so I can't. I'll Beacon.
I
I think it was Beacon that
I
just
will
said hi to you.
unshare.
No. No telephone.
Go to bed.
I need this. Savage.
Children are a blessing. Okay. Here we go. All right. So, so first of all, I do want to stress the importance, especially of an educational institution, to have a strategic plan. So I took the opportunity. We were supposed to have this conversation a few months ago, so that we could make some good progress on this and tee this up perfectly for next year, but we were a little bit behind. But what I did was I went through the strategic plan, identified the objectives, and just as an exercise, I marked, whether we completed the goals, they're still in progress, there's no progress, or some of them I don't even know. So as far as today's conversation, I would like to just keep it very narrowly focused on where we are and where we'd like to go. So I will share this document with the board members after today's meeting, and I'd like you to not just fill this out. We're going to have a lot of surveys this summer, the board and I, to complete and evaluate in order to structure our goals and activities next year. But I want everyone to go through this, lean on Chris if they have questions. So for example, develop and implement a systematic process to use data to inform instructional practices and identify student interventions. I know through the conversations about CASP and Galileo testing that there are those interventions occurring. However, I'm just not clear on the process and the system that's in place to capture that and to implement it. So there is a column for a question mark, and I encourage the board members to reach out to Chris to vet this. And this exercise, I'm hoping, will identify the opportunities that we have next year to really make sure that the organization is in line with the strategic plan established. Some of the things that I think are in progress, that's constantly in progress, strengthening the human capital of the administration and the faculty. Administrative bandwidth, I think that's something that is done, even though we did reduce some hours. We did add an assistant principal for the MYP program. Again, I think this is a document that we need to work with the administrators on and see where we've completed it or where we still have work to go. So it's pretty straightforward. I will send this on to everyone. From a next step standpoint, what I would like to do, and again, I'll talk about this in a presentation in a few minutes. I would like to, as Chris identified in his goals for next year, I would like to move forward with a new strategic plan for 2020 and 5 years beyond, specifically focusing on expansion of our site, the middle years program, and then, of course, in 2 to 3 years, starting the work for the diploma program. But I think it's definitely something that's important that we have as the core foundation of a long-term, as far as long-term objectives for the school. I personally do not feel it's crucial to invest the resources originally done in this strategic plan that was established in 2016. I think the school is a very different place then. If you review the document, which I will also include, you'll see a lot of the materials on it were geared towards best practices and standards established by other schools and charter schools and fundraising and things of that sort. But I do feel it is important to have a plan that we revert to every year and make sure that it falls in line with our annual board goals. And if not next year, if things are missed, just like we're doing this year, that they carry on the year after that. With that, I will open it up to questions. Frank?
Well, just let's provide a historic perspective on the current strategic plan. The current strategic plan was developed as one of the ideas was to get some consensus among the community because it was going off in 2 different directions. And so I think it shows, not by intent, but it shows when drafted, when you actually read the words. I would encourage us to take a fresh look and really maybe focus down on a couple of more less elaborative on 1.1, 1.2, or whatever the number is, just really don't break down the goals as definitive as they are here, and maybe really reach out to make it a little broader and give it a little bit more room for interpretation, yeah, rather than being very, mechanistic about it, right? A strategic plan, in my opinion, and again, this was a consensus bill to just move the school forward because it was divided. A strategic plan is a strategic plan. It doesn't need to be broken down in such detail often, but that's just an opinion. And that's my opinion and my comment. Thank you.
Danielle?
Is this something that you'd like us to do independently, or is this something we're going to get back together to do kind of together?
I would fill it out independently. If
Okay.
you have questions on specific ones about it, like, for example, I have a column that's got a question mark, right? Like that one, I would probably revert to Chris, and Chris would chase with Casey to say, yep, there is something in place to handle that, accommodate it, et cetera, et cetera. So I would do it independently, and then we would bring it forth in a board meeting. And once we go through it, and I think Frank is absolutely right, it's to balance it out with sort of the intent and the purpose, right? Because a lot of this is subjective. Is to bring it forth and say, okay, these are things that we're still working on, and these are things that we need to employ either this year because it is an organizational priority that we actually have it right away, and it's a shame that we haven't in the last 5 years or 10 years in the history of the school. Or we can say, you know what, this is something that can wait, and use that as a sort of as a mechanism for the new strategic plan. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So I think we're kind of working on it independently and then coming back as a group to discuss. Is that really
exactly?
Yeah.
And then when we discuss it,
yeah,
we can identify the action items and then use that to create hopefully a new one.
Okay, great. Because that's what I would prefer. Given that, independently we may think that something is a priority, and then when we get back together as a group, we may have more information on it and understand that maybe that's not a larger priority for the next couple of years.
Right,
okay.
Right. And to increase the efficiency of that process, what I wanted to do was send this to Chris first, you know what I mean? So he can, he can have a little comments box and say, this is what we're doing, or no, this is something that we still haven't met. Because I have a little bit of comfort that a lot of this has been met in some way, shape, or form. So I'll give you an example, right? Like the teacher improvement plan, the professional development plan, and the performance evaluation plan for the teachers. I knew there was something, right? Like I knew Casey, Scott, and Chris had a method to evaluate teachers. We just had to make sure that it was formalized, that it was approved and ratified by the board, and that it's structured. So that, I have comfort that has been checked off.
Okay.
Now that will go into the middle years teachers, the senior, the diploma program, and make sure, and that's Chris's responsibility to make sure those things are carried through. So
okay.
The first crack of this is going to be Chris. He's going to add some comments to it, and then we're gonna fill it out and then come back together.
Okay. Are those current X's Chris's X's or yours?
Or mine.
Okay. Okay. Those are my questions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deacon?
No, I'm glad to hear that Chris is going to go through it first, because I was worried that if 3 of us have the same question on one of the things, it's just redundant. So I think it's clear, and thank you.
Okay. All right. And if there's nothing further, then we will move on to the next agenda item. Stop sharing my screen. Affirmation of interest and approval of non-parent representatives. So that is myself, Frank, and Pete. So I know this was pretty contentious last year, but I'll make a motion to approve the non-parent representatives all in one. So that would be myself, Frank, and Pete. And if we can't get a majority, then we can break down person by person. Does that sound okay? All right. Thank you. All right. So I'd like to make a motion to approve Frank Boitine, Pete Goldschmied, and Yasir Julian Eftekar as non-parent board members for Board of Trustees for Goethe International Charter School. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
We don't get to comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, discuss. Yes, go ahead.
Frank, do you have any comments? Doesn't Frank go first? Frank, do you have any comments?
Frank,
No, I don't. I don't have any comments.
Okay.
Like I'm not going to comment on myself.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. My only comment was this was horrific last year, so it feels nice that this is going so much more smoothly this year. That's my only comment.
Mm.
Let's not get nuts. Let's see how the votes go. I'm kidding. Deacon, do you have any comments or questions?
No.
I think, look, to Danielle's point, this was after the horrors of last year. Chris and I sat down and we were like, I'm all about process, and let's come up with a very elegant process to appoint members and votes and yada yada yada. And I think it's a testament to how far we've come this year that we're not the same board. And I think we all have a level of camaraderie and professionalism with each other. So I think, I think this mode is probably the most efficient and also the most pleasant. And if there's no further discussion, we'll go to vote. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right. Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Deacon?
Yes.
And that is an aye for me. So the non-parent board members have been reappointed. We are now moving on to the election of officers. So I'm going to share my screen again. Chris, or Casey, I can do that. Thank you. We will start with the president. I am interested in continuing to be the president of Goethe and the trustees. I've created a small slide deck to just kind of talk about why I feel I could continue to serve the school and the organization. Before I do that, I would just like to ask, are there any other candidates for president?
Nope.
Frank?
No,
Danielle?
no.
Deacon?
No, thank you.
All right, and I will continue. So a few things that, this was a slide I covered last year, and we have a triadic agreement in the organization, and I think as the board and as the president, that this is a very distinct triadic agreement that we have with each other, with the administrators, with our parents, and all our stakeholders in the organization, which is, who are we, what are our responsibilities, and this is really our code. It's good governance, it's effective planning, and reviewing and monitoring, and ultimately it's communication. So that's sort of, I hope you've seen my approach this year to reflect this and continue to reflect this, and not to belabor the importance of these three things, but all the green you saw earlier on our board goals and activities, I think that is a testament to the fact that all of us, not just myself, have really stuck to these three core principles. So what have we really done? So everyone knows, like, I'm all about lists and process, and I do appreciate everyone's patience. As I witnessed last year, because we didn't have policy process and planning, it left a lot of things very unclear and nebulous, and it allowed a lot of, I think, divisiveness to show itself. I don't disagree that we are all competent, that we are all professionals, and that we all have the best interests of this organization. But I think when there's a little bit of planning and a little bit of process, that all opinions can be heard, disagreements can be had, and we just come back and we say, you know what, I didn't agree with that, but we're going to move on because we're still part of the same team. So I think the board goals have really helped with that. I think our meetings have become more structured. I know I've upset a lot of people when, you know, I didn't hold true to how board meetings were conducted before. And I've also tried to make sure that I'm also amenable to becoming flexible when necessary. That's still something I'm working on, of course. But I think that's definitely helped the board and each of us to deliberate more effectively. Communication, I think one of my challenges last year being on the board is that I felt there were a lot of members and a lot of times where discussions were just not productive. I mean, every single board meeting would end at 11:45 at night. And we still wouldn't accomplish anything. I think our discussions have become much more precise and they've become productive. I also witnessed that there were many trustees that weren't really contributing. You know, there was, and I think that's what we all want to do. We want to join this board because we want to contribute. We value education. We value academics. We love that our kids go to this amazing, amazing organization. And we want to see it around for another 20, 30 years. And I think part of my goal this year has been to really focus that desire, that energy into something much more productive. Clear roles and responsibilities, and Chris and I, especially through Executive Council, we work very closely to make sure that everyone stays in their lane. I, you know, regularly work with Chris, but also, you know, I am not the leader of this organization. I lead it with the team, which is the three of you and Pete. And the real leaders of the organization are Chris and his team. We are the long-term strategic planners of this school, and we are the operational heads, but as a group. So it's really important to me that board members know what our responsibilities are, that I know what my responsibilities are, and then we let the professionals manage the organization. That's not to say that we don't have our own expertise and we don't have our own point of view, which has been witnessed by, of course, our budget conversations. I think that's incredibly, incredibly valuable. But I think we've done a really good job in trusting the educators while at the same time sharing our own perspective. And transparency, you know, I can't speak to enough about this. I think a big part of this has just been Chris and his leadership and his team. Big E and Casey and Scott have done a fantastic job, just like I know they always could have. But I think it's been one of the most transparent years, that there are no side conversations, there are no side agendas. Granted, I've gotten myself into trouble because I try not to have any conversations about the organization unless they're completely transparent and in meetings. But I think that's also changed vastly. And governance. I mean, you know, I think last year I heard that word thrown around so much, but I think this is the year that we really employed what the board is very good at, and what the teachers are very good at, and what the administrators are very good at. So in a nutshell, I think we've come a long way. By no means would any of this have been possible without the other 4 board members. But it is something, and Chris and his team, but it is something that I'm personally very, very, very proud of. And I knew that this organization had all of this in them and their ability. So with that, I would like to talk about some goals for next year. So student achievement, we have evaluated CAST and we have evaluated Galileo. I feel very strongly that we need a Goethe flavor of what student achievement looks like. And I can say that right from my perspective, I would like to see more monitoring and performance evaluation of the language immersion program, specifically on the diverse groups in our organization, the children that don't have German backgrounds. And I spoke to Chris about this briefly. I think it's great that we look at Galileo, and if that is the tool that we're going to be using forward, I think we need, like, the board members need to understand every part of it, every facet of it. We need to, that's going to be our go-to, you know, like, we need to know what every metric is, why we value it, and what happens when it's not meeting our goals. So I talked to Chris about it earlier today. It's going to be something I hope that we can agree on as a board, and make sure that we are monitoring the student achievement goals on a regular basis, and we understand it, and it's a value to us and it's distinct to our program. Administrative leadership succession plan, and I know, Danielle, every time I say what happens if Chris gets hit by a bus, but these are things that I worry about. It's really important, and I believe wholeheartedly that talent from within is the best talent. I think our admin team is some of the best in you know, Los Angeles, in the state. But I think it's also important to cultivate the future of this organization, so that there aren't any surprises. You know, Chris has been great this year. I think, you know, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I think he's led us to greener pastures. But we definitely, as a board, need to make sure there's a plan, that nothing things don't catch us by surprise if things happen, and that you know, whether it's one document that's a page long, a few goals that Chris would lay out for his team. But I think it's important that the board focus on having an administrative leadership succession plan. Begin our material revision. Our charter does, I think we have to submit our charter has to be submitted in 2022. I think this is a good year to at least start the framework for the material revision. Just, you know, be ahead of the curve as much as possible. Long-term financial plan. So we touched on this a little bit at the beginning of the year with the site expansion, and then COVID hit. But we also touched on it with the budget, and I'm disappointed Pete's not here today, but I think it's important that the conversations that we have about resources and programs, I don't want those conversations to happen in the span of 2 weeks, you know, to meet a contractual deadline. I would rather those conversations happen more organically, starting at the beginning of the year, and we talk about what are the things that are core to the program, so that by the time we get to June, there are no surprises. I think Chris and his team has done an amazing job in reducing the structural deficit. But I think we've also recognized that the current political climate with LAUSD and UTLA, that we are, you know, our days in MDR are numbered. Our program, shared with this middle, you know, with LAUSD, can't expand and can't grow under the current circumstances. But in order to do that, we need a long-term financial plan, which I would suggest would be done for at least 5 years. And the other part, and Frank, you mentioned this as part of, you know, fundraising, but I think it's really, really crucial that we establish a board of regents for Goethe, a group of professionals, parents, you know, community leaders. We have so many great and so much great talent and successful parents in our group, to name a few. that I think we are doing a disservice by not having a board of regents and expanding our networking with their networks and expanding our message, and putting together the board of regents for sponsorships, corporate sponsorships, for networking, for making us the forefront of language immersion here in Los Angeles. And then lastly, we talked about it. Revise our 5-year strategic plan based on what we talked about today and the mechanism that we're going to use. So those are the suggested annual goals. We're going to come back to this. I think that's definitely something doable. We can be successful in next year, taking the organization forward, locking down the middle years program, and then expanding into the senior or the diploma program. So that's a little spiel. And then there is, I'd like to end with some news. And as most of you know, I don't like to say anything unless I'm certain of it, and I don't make promises that I know I can't keep. But I would like to advise the board that my children are moving out of state, and it is likely that they may not start again at Goethe in August. However, I'm still, professionally, my work is based out of Los Angeles. I have reached out, just like I did before. I reached out to Chris. I reached out to the president of the GPA and the officer, Frank, of the board. And there is consensus that they would like me to stay on as president. However, I do think it is fair to let you know that if I do stay on, I will no longer be a parent, an appointed board member that no longer has kids in the organization. However, I'm still dedicated to the school. I think I can still do some good work and carry on the vision and the mission forward. With that being said, I will open it up to questions. Frank?
Just comments, because you're number one, it's probably desirable that you don't have kids on there, just to give you more independence, in your assessment. As sad as I see any kid leaving, it is, people change, the circumstances change. But I will say, thank you for providing the rigor and structure on the board level. It really helped us out through the crisis, and it is highly appreciated. And I can only highly endorse your board presidency.
Thank you, Frank. Danielle?
I totally support you as well. I think that, last year was a really challenging year, and you did a great job keeping us all on track, having a real vision for the board, not just, getting through the things that the year prior didn't accomplish. And I totally understand too, the fact that, your family is moving out of state. It's not like you're, leaving Goethe for another local school, which would be a little odd. And so, yeah, thank you for everything, for all of your service. And I totally support you also.
Thank you, Danielle. Beacon?
I'm very pleased that you still want to stay in your position. I think you do an exceptional job of keeping track of the implementation of the larger vision. And I am also in support of you.
Thank you. I do want to stress how hard of a decision it was for the kids, because if COVID does keep going and we have distance learning, they're still in it. I'm just giving you a heads up. But it's just such a great school, and where we're going, there's nothing like it. And I coming from a background where I'm a child of public education, and seeing this fantastic organization and what it's capable of. Like there's you know, and with the support of not just you guys on the board, but you know, Chris and his team and the other people I mentioned. You know, it'd be really hard to go. So thank you, I appreciate it. That being said, is there a motion, and is there a second?
I move to seat Yazir as board president for the upcoming school year.
A
All right, is
second.
there a second? Okay,
Double second.
Sure. Yeah, that works.
all right. Frank,
Aye.
Danielle,
Aye.
Deacon,
Yes.
and that is an aye for me. All right, moving on to the position of treasurer. I would like to make a motion. Actually, should we go into discussion before we make a motion? What do you guys think? Do we have let's do it candidates.
Need a motion first.
Okay. All right. I'd like to make a motion to make Frank the treasurer. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. Mr. Boytine, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I like to continue with my very narrow interpretation of the Finance Committee's role. I think the Finance Committee, as I indicated later, is not a policy making committee. It is, in my opinion, there to question the validity as it regards to budget and a budget plan, to validity of the assumption, and to make sure that that it is conservative enough to even pass muster. You know, as it comes to budget development, that's a very narrow interpretation. I'd like to continue with that area, with that interpretation, because I think it's absolutely crucial that the administration is coming up with a plan to a plan how to structure the educational model going forward. So I think it's critical that it's their budget, and we'll fact check it and we'll interpret it. So that is just the budget making process. I think during the year, we have to be absolutely vigilant to make sure that we, check and audit and prove the individual financial transactions, and that we can issue an endorsement to every board meeting so that the board can rely on us, on our judgment, to say, yeah, this is a recommendable monthly report, and you can ask questions, but we recommend to really to approve it. So my concern on the budget, on the Finance Committee, is that I'd like to have a little bit of an expanded panel. We have currently 2 administrators, and we have a board member and a parent representative, and I think I'd like to have a little bit of a broader group, so that we can have a little bit more meaningful discussion sometimes on the meaningful discussion on the Finance Committee meeting, in order to really go a little deeper on the matter. I think with the 4 of us, especially with 2 non-educators, sometimes it's a little hard to follow the individual model, and so I think there is room for growth on the Finance Committee for more participation, whether it's through parents or through other board members. But I think the panel should be getting a little bigger. Thank you.
Danielle?
I have no questions for Frank. I just want to let you know I fully endorse you as treasurer. I think you've done a really fantastic job, especially considering the tremendous challenges we have going into next year. So appreciate all of your hard work on that.
Deacon?
Agreed.
All right. Let's do a vote. Frank?
Well, I vote for myself, yes.
Danielle?
Aye.
Deacon?
Yes.
And an aye for me as well. All right, moving on to secretary. Are there any motions for secretary?
My understanding is that we don't currently have a board secretary. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, I would then move to consider Danielle for secretary.
All right. I second. Is there, let's open up discussion. Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a board officer position, and we don't have one. And I think Biggie was kind enough to function as a board secretary, you know, as a note taker, you know, in between. And I think we do need one. So.
So just to clarify, I think it's important that, because the charter says that the secretary has to keep notes, like know that they're being taken and that they're being placed somewhere. But I feel that that responsibility should stay with the administration. I think they've done a great job of keeping notes, bringing it forth to the board meetings. I know last year we wouldn't get meeting notes for like 6 months, 7 months. So Danielle, not to say that you shouldn't keep notes, absolutely, but I think it's been going really, really well. But that's my 2 cents. But, so
Can I just add one more point? I think also, you know, I see also the secretary as the watchdog of the bylaws. So, you know, have a good understanding of what the bylaws say. If there are any conflict, we didn't need it. We didn't need to look at the bylaws this year. Mm-hmm. But I think there's also having a deeper understanding of our bylaws and our constitutional documents. You know,
sure.
I think that is one of the main main tasks as a secretary, as I see it.
Okay. Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do to be the secretary this year. I think that I was very hesitant at the beginning of last school year to put myself forward for any type of position because it was my first year on the board, and I very much felt like as my freshman year I should kind of learn as much as I can. But I think you know, throughout the year I've grown a lot as a board member, grown a lot in even understanding the rules. Some I break sometimes, but it's never intentional. And I'm a rule follower and an abider of the law. And so, you know, I think there's maybe the implication is that we don't need a secretary, and I would support that too. But I'm very happy to step up to do it if everyone has consensus that we do need somebody in this role.
Deacon?
Do you want to do it, Danielle?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Cool. Nothing further for me.
All right. Then let's go to a vote. Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Beacon?
Yes.
And that is a yes for me as well. Okay. Okay, so we are now up to the approval of the meeting calendar for the new academic year. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, pull it up. Okay. All right. So in looking at our calendar, we looked at a number of things. And the first is that we are not meeting in July, which is normal and typical of charters. The first meeting would be August 10th. That is not the third Monday of the month. It's the second Monday. And there's two reasons for doing that. One is because we have a longer break, we want to be sure we have time to meet in advance of school if necessary, because the week following is when school starts. And so that's the other reason. Reason number two is it didn't work very well last year when it was the night before school starts and we're preparing for a board meeting. It was very, very difficult. So I highly endorse August 10th as our beginning meeting. The other meetings are pretty well set as third Monday of each month. We do have a December meeting, which is required as a requirement for financial documents that need to go in December. We have a January meeting, a February meeting, March, April, May, and then June we have 2 meetings, and that is because of the requirement for LCAP. That we do a public hearing and then approve the budget. So that would be our process next year, which would be June 7th for the LCAP public hearing and June 14th for approval. And we do not need to do that when we do the LCAP on the later version. We'll do the public hearing on a regular meeting. And then follow up with an approval at a meeting a month later. But as we don't know what the budget will be for a year from now, we need to do those back to back. So any questions about the timing or any concern about the dates?
I would say I'm fine with the dates. As far as time, are you proposing still the 6 o'clock start time?
6 p.m.
Okay. So board members, what are your thoughts on the 6 o'clock start time? Frank?
Well, first comment, I unfortunately won't be there on August 10th because I will be coming back from Hawaii, which I just booked yesterday, on vacation.
You were able to get a hotel in Hawaii? They're still not opening up hotels yet.
Well, yeah, I'll talk to you later about it, but you can cancel any minute, right? So that's how it works.
Frank, are you literally just coming back that day?
The 11th.
The 11th is returning.
Right. So it doesn't matter, I can always join because it's during the day. I can join via teleconference or Skype meeting. So that's a possibility. I personally like the 6 p.m. meeting because my day, especially on Mondays, they are so packed that I do need the time to get to the board meeting on time. It requires travel for me from downtown, from my workplace, and so it's 6 o'clock would be preferred to keep it that way. Earlier is sometimes often a stretch, at least especially on Mondays.
Danielle?
I also prefer 6. One day when we all get to go back to our offices, it would be really difficult for me to get there any earlier than 6 o'clock. Like leaving my office at 5:30 is like taking a half day. So I prefer 6. As far as the dates, they look great to me because I don't have any work travel planned yet because we're not allowed to travel. But that's going to change at some point. I also want to know, I know it's very unclear right now what the new school year is going to look like in August, and whether that'll be in person, distance learning, et cetera. But do we have any indication, because I know this is more so controlled by the Brown Act, of, what the year will look like as far as virtual meetings like next fall? Like, do we anticipate that this will still be acceptable through a certain time frame? Because me personally, going in person, even if the kids are in school, it's still a bit riskier, with immune systems and things like that.
So we don't know. My guess is we'll be allowed to do this for sometime into the new year, and I would kind of encourage. I think we've had better turnout. We've had. I think it's kind of functional. So whether we could do a hybrid type meeting, some in person, some not. But we can kind of determine as we go. But I anticipate that we'll be doing Zoom meetings at least in the first part of the year.
Okay. That's great. No other questions.
Deacon?
I may not be able to make that meeting on the 10th, so if that affects quorum, then that's something to keep in mind. Other than that, any time is fine.
Can I ask, would you be available, Beacon, on the, like, say if we did it on the 12th, the Wednesday, the 12th?
Yes, that would be better.
And then Frank, you're back on the 11th. So then, does that work for you too, Frank?
At night. Yeah, 11th late at night. No problem.
So I would recommend if we could have it be Wednesday, August 12th as the first meeting. That way, it's not a Monday, but at least it'll be the week before school starts, and it would help ease our issue, and then we wouldn't have quorum issues.
Okay. All right, then I will, I'd like to make a motion to approve the calendar with that change to Wednesday, August 12th, starting at 6 o'clock for the rest of the year, third Mondays. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Yes.
Beacon? That's a yes for me. All right. Board development. We going to try to keep this brief. If I can share my screen. Thank you. So I'm going to send this to the board members. I've created a self-evaluation, and it's a draft. So what I'd like to do, the first pass is I'd like everyone to go through and see what they think about the questions. If they're spot on, if we should have different kinds of questions, additional questions. But I think self-evaluations are really, really powerful, and it'll also help us to draft a more clear scope of work for us as a group for next year. So I'm going to send this to everybody. Again, the questions are just a starting off point, so please take a look at it. If I miss something, feel free to add it. I think it's important that once this is finalized and formatted, we complete it with us as far as our group, and then I'll bring it forward into the board meeting in August to make sure that if there are areas of board development that we need to focus on, that we add it to our agenda for next year. Pretty straightforward, just very mechanical, but some things to I'll give you some examples. So start at the beginning. School has a well-drafted charter, contract with sponsoring agents, that kind of stuff. Obviously, that is done. The school has well-drafted articles and bylaws. We know our bylaws. Danielle will know, obviously, that they are kind of a little messy, but we are starting the material revision next year, so obviously that's going to go into progress. There are things that are, like long-term plans translate into annual plans, the systematic processes. But I would like to take this opportunity to use the survey, get everyone's feedback, then incorporate it, take the feedback to finalize our goals for next year, and then set it in place year after year for the trustees going forward. Any questions about the survey, Frank?
No question. I think I agree with you. Just a comment that self-reflection is a good is a standard operating procedure.
Right. Danielle,
No questions or comments.
Deacon,
Can you just show the top, the check mark boxes? Just want to make sure I understand. So we go through this and we type out what we think, and just like in the other one, we're coming back together to all review it together?
correct. So if there's any changes, language changes, or additional questions that we feel like we need to add, I think this is where it goes. Okay.
Got it, thanks.
Next item for board development is we talked about adding, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Covered that. We talked about adding new board members. I think it's important that so the summer is the time that we set this organization up for our plans and our goals for the next academic year. Make sure that we identify the areas of opportunity and the areas of challenge, obviously. A couple of board meetings ago, we talked about potentially adding additional board members. I think it's really crucial still that we establish the board development committee, that we have an effective recruitment and composition strategy. I think there were a few board members that mentioned that we should possibly have more parents on the board, which I'm not opposed to, but I think it's also very important that before we get a solution, I think we do an assessment on what we need and what the board needs from a composition standpoint and the person, the role. Those are my thoughts on it. I would suggest that if we can identify the areas of weakness in the board survey for ourselves, if we can identify the areas that need improvement from our goals, from our long-term strategic plan standpoint, I have a feeling that board member, whether it's internal from the school already or external, I think that will become more clear to everyone, and it'll allow us to have the most high caliber people representing this organization. I say that because part of it is I've been really reading a lot about the strategic plan and its emphasis on diversity and influence and affluence on board member, new recruits for board members. So those are my thoughts on it, and I will open it up to discussion. Right?
Generally, I'm not opposed as well again to onboard more parents candidates. I think we, when we should look in our immediate community, we have a lot of talent. I think we need, I would like to see always some legal expertise on the board and maybe some technology expertise on the board, in addition to other diversity and other goals we have.
I'm sorry, Frank, you cut out. You said legal and technology. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Danielle?
Right now, we currently have the minimum number of board members that our charter allows us to have and continue to be a board. I always thought, I do think that's a bit risky, that we're at the minimum right now when we can grow to be 9 members. I do think too that, it's important to identify our strengths and then areas that we can be stronger in and recruit people in those areas. But I also think that even if we feel that we have specific strengths, it wouldn't hurt us to find others that have the same strengths. I think it's always nice to have multiple points of view, even if there are people in the same practice area. So that's something that doesn't bother me. I do think it's important, though. I do think it's great to start within Goethe, given that right now it's going to be a little trickier to find somebody that's external. Frank and I actually spoke to somebody who was interested a few weeks ago in applying. I'm not sure if he has yet, but I think he would be a good candidate. But a concern has always been that, you know, we are at the bare minimum right now. And if somebody were to resign, I don't even know what that means, to be honest. And I'm not saying we recruit somebody just for that reason. But I do think it's important, you know, not to be super precious either about, you know, the type of practice area. And if we feel like we don't already serve that area.
Thank you, Danielle. I agree. Deacon?
Yeah, I think it's important to bring on new board members. I'd like to see someone with educational experience and also with real estate experience, especially if we're looking to expand site and whatnot. It would be nice to have someone who's had experience in those things.
Okay. Just to, I know throughout the year, I've had a few board members that have come up to me with recommendations for board members. So I would ask those board members to engage Chris. And I completely agree with you, Danielle, like we're at the bare minimum. And again, I'm sorry to use this phrase, but if someone gets hit by a bus or I fall off a horse, then yes, that is, there is jeopardy there. So I ask those board members to engage Chris, provide the contact information of those interested parties. And Danielle, you mentioned someone, you and Frank spoke to someone. Absolutely, Chris, I think you should engage them. And then let's bring it forward for you know, evaluation. It's my hope that in our August meeting that because we didn't get a chance to do this year, that we ratified the members. You know, we'll talk about it, but because I think Chris, there's a couple of parents on that board development committee, right? So we may need to open it up a little bit when school starts, but we'll figure out the logistics. And I think we already have a general model for the procedure to recruit new members, not necessarily the strategy or the composition, that kind of stuff, but just the mechanics of the recruitment process. So we can definitely bring that forward in August, and start that immediately for the new academic year. Okay.
I have a question,
anything
Chris.
else?
Has anybody applied in the past couple of weeks or reached out to you?
I have someone who had expressed some interest, and I'm following up with them this week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing
Just
further,
a final comment, because we redirected the person of interest, or the interested person, to follow the procedure and, you know, and submit applications, you know, and so
okay.
Yeah, so we didn't want to, just to make sure that we're not overstepping our boundaries here.
All right. Okay. Topics for upcoming board meetings. I don't, you know, August is our next one. I think we talked about the board goals for the upcoming year. I will send everyone the strategic plan so everyone can review it. I'll send it to Chris first. We're going to have that conversation most likely in August. We're also going to have a chance to evaluate the board goals based on our self-evaluation. And then the board development committee will make some progress in ratifying or approving the members and getting that rolling in the August meeting, definitely. Anything else I missed? Just look for no thumbs up. Everyone's good. All right. With that being said, let us move to closed session.
So Casey, if you can move all of our board members into the conference room and then pass over to me hosting, then I can join them in the conference room. that sound good? And for we anticipate this is I think we said 25 minutes, and then we'll return back. And if there's anything to report out, we'll report out at that time, whether there's anyone here or not.
I think that's fine, Chris. If we could just, the board members, before you join, if we could have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Should I?
So in terms of ask or at what point do you need, how long do you need?
I'll text you. Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect.